Welcome, everyone. Join us on the channel, Denis Selisevich. Everyone is waiting. Everyone is asking when you will do a stream together. So I'm really happy about this. So ask your questions. We'll get to work. Well, I'd like to start with a story in order to ask a question. Here are four former presidents: Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Biden. They themselves foolishly started wars or allowed them to begin. Clinton, the war in Kosovo; Bush Jr., Georgia, Iraq, Afghanistan; Obama, the surrender of Crimea, Libya; Biden, Russia attacked Ukraine. It turns out that all of them either started wars, opened the way for wars, or participated in them and didn't stop them. Only Trump stopped 6 wars, and now you could say there will be a 7th. So I have a question. In your opinion, how long will it take to stop the war started by Biden and Putin?
I don't want to sound optimistic, but I think if we're talking about signing a peace treaty, making everything official and stopping it completely, it will take about another year, in my opinion.
So you think that even the first meeting, if there is one between Putin and Zelensky, might not work out right away?
Actually, I'll tell you my opinion, and not just my opinion. Consider that there is some partial information there, certain information, but in principle, it can already be figured out. So what was Zelensky counting on? They devised this strategy. Whether it was the president's office or the British, it doesn't matter. They're all alike. So agree to everything. You thought about this, right? So it was published in the press that Starmer and a British diplomat or someone like that were advising him on how to behave with Trump. Put on a jacket. He told someone that he was sitting there in a t-shirt. That's just crazy. With Trump, he put on some kind of shabby jacket, Stalin style. Okay, agree. Praise him. In the first 4.5 minutes, he said, "Thank you, Trump," 8 times. So it was completely different from the first meeting in the Oval Office. Accept all the proposals. Don't deny anything. Never say you disagree. Just say you'll think about it and agree. Think about it and agree. And the expectation is that Putin won't agree, meaning Zelensky believes and they believe that Putin won't agree to this meeting. And in this way, they'll show it later. We've tried everything, but he refuses. He's the problem. So give us weapons, money, and sanction Putin. We'll keep fighting for 5 more years.
I see. Well, that's it. Fox wrote that Trump gave an inside look at yesterday's historic peace summit at the White House with Ukrainian President Zelensky, a key European leader, and spoke about his bold diplomacy. President Trump emphasized his unwavering commitment to ending the bloodshed and ensuring lasting peace, uniting European allies to take a leading role in security and pave the way for a final resolution to the war. Do you agree that the main guarantor here is actually Trump, not the Europeans?
The main guarantor is Trump, and ultimately everything depends on Trump and the United States. But I don't want to understand the Europeans. We often say America, but the Biden administration and the Trump administration are 2 very different things. Europe today is very different from 15 or 20 years ago. For example, Orban and Nawrocki represent Europe, as do Merkel and Macron. That is, we need to clarify. The leaders of European countries, Central and Western Europe, well, people like Merkel and Macron, they're nobodies and they're globalists like Starmer. Though it's not the European Union, they're still trying to play their own game and have stepped onto a slippery path. I would even say, in a way, they're trying to trick Trump. That's what I think. That's what I see in them. There were several moments like that. Trump is sitting there telling his story, and then Merckx, let's establish a ceasefire regime now. Let's meet again in a month and discuss it. This is just dragging things out. Just talk. But Trump says, no, let's do it on Friday. In 5 or 7 days, we'll already be meeting. Quickly, 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 just like in business. That's how everything gets done. But here it's, let's wait a month. Let's wait 3 months. And meanwhile, Putin attacks somewhere. And we're just sitting here watching him escalate. It's happening now, just as expected. Their calculation is clear. Zelensky.
Well, let me quote what Trump said, confirming your words about being at the table. One of the gentlemen said, well, let's meet again in a month or 2. That was Merckx, yes. And Merckx said, yes, he said a month or 2, in a month or 2. 40,000 people will die. You have to do it tonight. Well, that's a completely different approach. But here's my next question. Is Zelensky ready to move quickly in this direction like Trump?
No, I'm telling you, he's not going to move anywhere. He's going to play along. Putin suggested holding meetings in Moscow and invited Zelensky to come. Obviously, the KGB will go everywhere to bother you and will keep doing so until the end before anything can be done. Of course, no one would agree to Moscow. Everyone understood that. Right now, they're counting on him not agreeing to another city either, that he'll set some extra conditions. In short, they don't believe that Putin will say, all right, I'm going, for example, to Geneva or Rome or Vienna to meet with Zelensky, especially one-on-one. And honestly, I'll tell you, at this point, I can't even imagine that meeting. I can picture a humorous scenario like in Istanbul, where Trump or maybe Rubio runs between Zelensky and Putin as a go-between. Well, something like that. And then Trump speaks with both. But I doubt Zelensky and Putin would hold a joint press conference. I don't believe in that at all. With Putin, that anything related to the press would happen together, I don't believe in that either. Trump and Putin stood and talked together. So for now, it's not that I'm a skeptic. I just understand very well what the president's office is like. And they understand what's waiting for them. They can't end the war.
You wrote on X that Putin asked China to act as a guarantor of the agreement with America and the Europeans. And I think that China has the greatest threat in this situation and is the instigator of this war. Do you remember that Yermak once said, back when Zelensky first visited the White House, that they needed to consult or ask China for help? How do you see that?
Well, to be honest with you, no matter how much I don't like it or you don't like it, it's weak. I used to think events like this would exclude China and Turkey, but Turkey is simply a geopolitical player. That's why I think in the final guarantees, China will definitely be present and Turkey, China. In this case, of course, it's a support for Putin because Putin is in the den, so to speak. Enemies, after all, no matter how you look at it, despite what the globalists are doing, it's still Western civilization. France, Italy, and Germany.
Yes, what's left of it?
Putin is isolated by the civilized world and seeks another dictator like Lukashenko, though Lukashenko isn't quite on his level despite Minsk's eagerness. Lukashenko has been restless this month. He wants to act as the peacemaker. So a final or at least an intermediate meeting could happen in Minsk between Zelensky, Putin, and Trump, or at least Zelensky and Putin. I don't think it will happen without China. As you said, China is one of the main, if not the main beneficiaries.
100%.
So yes.
Well, so how do you think the map of Ukraine will look after the final agreement? What's your opinion? What will one side and the other agree to? Thank you.
I can tell you what kind of scheme they've come up with. Right now, both the law and the constitution allow this. These are the territories currently under our control. The current map shows Luhansk and Donetsk regions will be redrawn, and new ones will be created in part of Dnipropetrovsk. And they'll say, well, that's it. You control all these things. Maybe it's a deal, or maybe Putin wants to later tell Russians that all of Donbass is theirs. I don't know, but thank you. Yes, that's what will happen. They're planning exactly that. And it's currently the president's top topic.
There's this option where Ukraine gives up both Donetsk and Luhansk completely, and Putin withdraws entirely from Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. Do you really think that's possible or not?
As a whole, if Russian becomes official, churches and religion aren't pressured, and neutrality is kept, then yes, I'm sure under those conditions. Or for example, federalization, basically to put a specific trump card on the table, not just a trump card, but something that hasn't been offered yet. On the contrary, I believe that would benefit us, democracy, the future, and development. What is federalization? It's basically decentralization, an extreme form of super decentralization. As for the Russian language, I don't know, I'm not talking about that. The second state official, no, not state, just one official language, Ukrainian. Even now, half the country speaks Russian. Let's be honest, 10 years ago, 95% of Verkhovna Rada members spoke and gave speeches in Russian, and 90% of television was in Russian. No one died, nothing terrible happened. Neutrality, well, we are already a neutral country de facto, so we just need to take the reality and put it down in writing. No matter what the constitution or new laws say, this will end conflicts permanently. That means there won't be any new Mansyuk, other provocateurs, Nitsoy, Farion, and all the rest, who will stir up United States Agency for International Development, all these people who will agitate society and create arguments. I'd suggest those proposals, but that's what they think. People are giving up their interests, and now more are interested in the Russian language than territory. These so-called professional patriots
I understand. And can we say that federation is basically a synonym for the word republic, right? If you look at it that way.
Well, do you mean that each individual federation is like a separate republic in that sense?
Well, something like that.
Well, yes, but putting the question that way, interpreting it like that will only make things worse. They'll claim all of Ukraine is being destroyed for happiness and link it to separatism. I absolutely disagree and stand my ground to the end. And I deliberately use the word federalization, no matter who doesn't like it.
I understood the direct question. When will the elections be?
Optimistically, fall of 26, well, spring if we're really lucky, but honestly, maybe even in 27, 26, 27. Let's put it that way.
This year is definitely not an option. No, it's being postponed. On X, you mentioned Britain announced a pact to help Ukraine hold its first post-war elections. Today in London, an agreement was signed between the Electoral Commission of the United Kingdom and Ukraine. The essence is that London is offering assistance in improving Ukraine's democratic practices and organizing the first elections after the end of the war. In other words, the globalists are pulling Ukraine back under their control. That's right.
What Trump destroyed, United States Agency for International Development has decided to let British services under Starmer take over, though not Starmer personally. This will also affect NGOs, those non-governmental organizations that have infiltrated, and the best propagandists. Naturally, only the top people will get financing now, as the structures are already in place and have existed for years. United States Agency for International Development has been especially active in this for the past 10 to 12 years. They want to take this under their control. You know what that looks like? I'll put it this way. Let people there not be offended or worried right now, but as preparation for a new war, that's what I would call it, Ukraine is being prepared for a new war. They haven't given up on their idea that Ukraine should be a shield, a buffer zone. I mean, a militarized zone, basically a battlefield between civilized Europe and Russia. Let there be death and blood and everything else over there, but here we'll have a quiet, peaceful life. We'll enjoy ourselves and get richer.
It turns out that globalists and socialists can't exist without war at all, because they need an external irritant to exploit their own population, to squeeze them through taxes, to squeeze out the last drop of blood, so to speak, and thus distract attention. Because the main thing is that the state is robbing, the state is guilty of all these sins. Yes, of course.
Of course.
I have a question. What do you think sooner or later the European Union, which I think is kind of Soviet-like, might fall apart? Could the same fate await Russia? Who do you think will fall apart first? I did a poll on this and will share the results after your answer.
I think you believe that the European Union will fall apart faster than Russia. That's what it seems to me. Yes, I think the European Union won't fall apart like that. It won't fall apart. In short, no larger organization or union exists. I believe a major global reformatting is coming. It will still be called the European Union, but will follow its original founding principles, not what it has become over the past 15 years. Nightmare. I saw an episode yesterday. I'll tell you about it. Let's say an acquaintance of mine on Instagram was showing she lives in Monaco. She works there in a serious organization. And they were walking down the street and some savages attacked, started insulting them and said, "You Russians, Ukrainians will be slaves soon." She started recording them to call the police and they snatched her phone. Editor in Monaco. Well,
what's going on? Monaco?
Yes, of course. It's a disaster. If before we discussed Berlin, London, what's happening? In Italy, things aren't great, but Spain is still okay. What do we have now? Monaco, there where basically very wealthy people are gathered. People go there for safety to some extent, both financial and personal safety. This is what everything has become. Some may say it's normal, but it's not.
Of course. But it turns out that this mix of social communists and Islamists is just explosive if they get inside the country. The state is socialist and then society becomes Islamized. And that's it. There's no state anymore. So I think that Europe is in a deplorable state. I believe that if Ukraine manages to stop the war and build its economy, it will be in a winning position. What do you think?
Yes, but there's one thing. Zelensky, when he came here recently, just 2 days ago at that meeting, he was actively pushing the idea and the globalists were supporting him. I just didn't quite understand some of the nuances. In short, let's get Ukraine into NATO now, obviously, and into the European Union. So they'll accept them. And you know, Trump has already called Orban, asked what the issues are with this. Well, Trump can influence Orban. Globalists can't, but Trump can. And you know, here's what I'm afraid of. We end the war successfully, people stop dying. Some kind of political process, some kind of return to normal life. And then the European Union, and what if Ukraine is in the European Union? I'll say right away, I don't believe that's how it will be, but it's really being seriously considered. That's an immediate catastrophe. That means elections will be held in Brussels right away, just like it was with Romania. It's immediate. Where did you spend an extra €100? They'll be asking. In short, they might make you register on X or YouTube with your passport and so on and so forth.
So it's possible that they'll make you take in refugees from Arab countries.
You beat me to it. I think it's the globalists. The plan for Ukraine is war, and after the war, the next step is to bring in those people that rebel to finally tear the country apart. Ukraine just needed savages, and then it's definitely over.
Poland refused.
Hungary refused, you see? And those who wanted to go there can easily cross into Ukraine.
You wrote on X that you shouldn't think Trump will just give Ukraine to Britain that easily, and there are surprises ahead. So if you think about it, basically Trump hasn't even started dealing with the internal situation in Ukraine yet. He's just stopping the war from the outside. What do you think, when will the Republican wing start acting to help bring a pro-Trump, pro-conservative wing to power? Or even a pro-libertarian one, you could say.
Yes, I'll start from the beginning. I wrote it that way because I know Trump's team and administration are making extraordinary efforts right now. You see, as some simple-minded people think, they believe Trump needs the Nobel Peace Prize, but they don't understand that he'll get it anyway for the 6 wars he's already stopped. That's a different question now. Trump needs to leave a legacy, and the United States as a global structure, as a leading hegemonic state, needs to think about what will happen after Trump, and what is the point of just stopping the war right now. Ukraine continues to be a kind of dump, which Zelensky and his predecessors have turned it into. So in 4 years, America will revisit this issue, but things will be very different then. That's it, especially since Lukashenko is on his last term. Putin will do everything. This last term means global changes in the region. And this is what I'm advocating for. Ukraine should be an example of giving freedom. So much so that in Europe, even the Germans, French, and especially the British would be amazed. Damn, here they try to jail us for posts. We can't even use social media anonymously. Everything that's happening in Ukraine, it's complete freedom of speech. That's what it is. And then Eastern Europe, for example, us, Hungary, Poland, we will be the example for them. Not like before when we looked up to France, Germany, Spain, Italy, but now they will think, look who's setting the example for us. Yes, their economy is bigger historically, their culture is larger, that's all undeniable, that's the approach I support. Ukraine must offer as much freedom as possible for a chance, and I get the impression, looking at some news and knowing some information there, now candidates from political forces will compete to see who emphasizes militarizing society more. And we have students, and we have children, and we have pregnant women, and we have pensioners. It's madness. Ukraine needs freedom, economic freedom for the individual, something that Ukraine has never had before. The nation should be inspired by the speeches of candidates, or especially the president. We watch Trump and you get inspired.
Sweeter and more inspiring.
Now that's a real president, far above ours. With them, the future looks bright, but with ours, you just feel hopeless since nothing changes.
You wrote on X that you spent 3 years trying to overthrow Zelensky and Yermak, only for Zaluzhny to bring in Pashinsky. It's a real tragicomedy. So what are the chances that Zaluzhny actually becomes president? In percentage terms?
Unfortunately, it's high. I think about 70%. I'll tell you what it's related to, what the disappointment is about. You know, there's a leading company in America, the most reputable one, Gallup, which conducts surveys and works in sociology. Both the White House and everyone else rely on it. I posted this on my private channel to avoid upsetting people, but now I'll discuss it on air. Everyone knows I posted it, though in Ukraine, they don't usually share this. 69% of people are in favor of stopping the war in any form. 69%. If you don't trust Gallup, you can't trust anyone. Right after that, their study on the level of trust in Zelensky comes out. It's not a political rating like I'd vote for Zelensky tomorrow, Pak, but just asking, do you support Zelensky? 67% support Zelensky.
Well, in my opinion, Trump has different statistics. There were 4, if you remember.
Well, that's true, and 88 as well. But the point is how one society, maybe 70% want the war to end by any means, realizing things are going badly, yet 67%, almost the same group, trust Zelensky. So you trust the one who allowed the war, prolonged it, flooded the country with blood, ruined it, and has no plans to end it? Well, so you talk about libertarianism, but what am I getting at? Those other 30, that's my audience, my potential electorate, and so on.
It turns out that there can be 2 directions in Ukraine. Either it's about the globalists, which includes Zelensky and the general, or the other option is about the Trump side and the conservative wing. But here, Trump's team hasn't really dealt with Ukraine yet, so I think everything is still ahead. And what do you think, after all, how quickly can this media space be broken so that, well, if, let's say, to counter all this marathon and so on?
Honestly, I think the devil is not as scary as he is painted, and I see this task as manageable. But there is one condition: freedom of speech. That they don't allow it so actively because they understand that freedom of speech implies, like in business, fair professional competition. With competitors, you either win or lose. And how can they win? Do they have expertise or follow any reforms? No, they only care about the budget, money, and tenders. And of course, they would lose in debates anyway. Therefore, if there is freedom of speech, if there is safety for people who pursue such policies, if you get the support of the Trump administration, let's say conservatives, if you get the support of Elon Musk, then it's no longer a question of money. People, I gave a few interviews there, and many mistakenly believe you always need a lot of money. Well, let's take a look. Poroshenko is a billionaire. He has a massive party structure, 100% name recognition, but when he appears on YouTube, nobody watches him. The main point is, if you can't attract people without money, just by who you are as a politician, you're not offering anything. Razumkov tried everything. He punched a boxing bag, wore different sweaters, changed his hairstyle, but people don't listen, they're not interested, they don't offer anything, they don't inspire.
That's the thing, because people are so tired of these parasite politicians, it's just unbearable to watch anymore.
Ole. So even without fully understanding, they sense something is wrong.
Of course, yes, you can see it. Well, look at how Poroshenko performs, a typical bureaucrat official raising his eyebrows, puffing out his chest, like, well, look, this is how a president speaks, Trump. He delivers information and how he always has to puff himself up, like chest out and all that.
While making such primitive remarks.
Come on. That's why I believe that now is the time for pragmatists, like how Trump acts, by business principles, meaning a pragmatist acts for results, while politicians are all about the process. For them, the day passed, they had a good flight and dined at a nice restaurant. Of course, but what people actually need doesn't interest them at all. These are 2 completely different worlds.
For example, politicians, if a problem arises, we create a commission for a month, spend a month forming it and choosing members, meet for a month and a month later, just like that. But do you see how it is with Trump here? When it comes to fighting migrants, the National Guard gets involved and deals with it very harshly. As with other issues, we handle things like with Putin today, meet with Zelensky, then a week later with Putin, or as we discussed with Merz.
So the result, yes, of course, the result is everything, not this fooling around. That's why for the past 100 years, you could say all this politics and mess, they just break off into 2 or 3 parties, then hang out among themselves and have nothing to do with the people at all.
Yes.
And this later leads to wars because in order to stay in power, they need to create external irritation.
Well,
of course, you mentioned Milei, and you also wrote on Telegram that Milei is doing it again. Argentina achieves another primary surplus. In July 2025, the Argentine Treasury recorded a usual surplus of $1.33 billion. So now I have a question. Zelensky had the same opportunity since 2019 to start such reforms, but we haven't seen anything like that, and we won't see it anymore.
Let's explain to people so that those who don't really understand economics can get it, what a budget surplus is. Imagine yourself, for example, you have a salary of 5,000, let's say, of something. If you can't stay within that, you use loans or credit cards and end up in the negative or just break even. Here, though, you actually have extra left over. That is, your income is higher than your expenses. And of course, when your income is higher than your expenses at the state level in the treasury, you can, first of all, lower taxes. You can do anything, so you feel at ease. In Ukraine, the same action was needed. Immediately cut government spending. And during the war, if you were so stubborn and didn't do this since 2019, when else would you do it if not during the war? Especially when your territories are shrinking. But that's not how the question is asked, because their goal is just to make money. Regardless of which Holoborodko he portrays, if someone sets such goals, they pursue them. And here you read Zelensky's post. I posted it as a joke about how he talked to Milei and said, "We will study your reforms. Congratulations to you."
It's just funny.
Ole. The next day, a message comes out. So Ukraine will be creating some new thing, investing more money in its international image. Again, it's another semi-ministry with a big budget, another black hole trying to boost the image. What image can Zelensky even have?
Just another scheme. Of course, they don't know how to do it any other way. They're not creators. They can just take your money and invest it in some projects. At the same time, 90% won't stick. That's one thing. And I think,
What for? This? It's a legal way to fund bloggers, not using crypto or offshore money. They even invest heavily in X, and everyone knows it. For example, Vishagra 24's public page. I see, he never posts anything against Zelensky. Clash Report never posts anything either. I understand that most likely, we can suspect that he gets something for this every month. Some influencers focus on the English-speaking market and invest there. They say Putin invests heavily, but so does Zelensky. And I think this is a legal way. Vatkat also works with his own bloggers to support them.
Yes, you wrote that in your telegram. I think we have a good chance to put an end to the war in Ukraine. Putin and Zelensky have a complicated relationship. Let's see how they handle it, if they can overcome this psychological barrier. Tell me, please.
Like I said, I don't really believe it. A KGB agent, maybe. He's trained for that. But Zelensky? I can only add, as I said, that Zelensky's plan is their hope that Putin won't agree. But if the KGB has already calculated this, if they change the game and agree, he'll have to argue with Putin at a personal meeting to come out and say to Trump, well, not everyone can get along. But Trump may be asked, if you can't negotiate, we'll have to replace you. And that's it. Everything stays as it is.
So on X, you write Trump. Trump wrote, not Netanyahu is a war hero. I think so too, meaning Trump is in his own style. Do you think Israel should be an ally of Ukraine?
Of course, absolutely. I think Israel, Argentina, if we're talking about that region, El Salvador, well, in Europe, the closest are probably the Netherlands and to some extent Italy. Let's hope for more right-wing leaders. Absolutely. That is, I think there's no other way to globally change the situation in the world. That is, except for such global leaders of the right direction, conservative libertarian around this ideology or these ideologies, they definitely need to cooperate. There are so many topics, especially military ones with Israel, economic topics. Let's look at the statistics. A huge number of repatriates to Israel from Ukraine, from the countries of the Soviet Union. There are plenty of topics for cooperation for everyone, a huge number. There should be visa-free travel, economic and military cooperation, business ties, zero tariffs, and mutual free trade. The main point is who was involved. How was it during the League of Nations? A new me. That is no censorship. We agree on who is here. No censorship, no pressure, no elections, nothing. That is just to restore things to normal.
Yes, well, Trump wrote on his Truth Social that justice is coming. No one is above the law. Criminal investigations of Obama, Biden, and Clinton are probably approaching. I have a question. Do you believe they'll get to Obama and Clinton and even to Ukraine?
I would like that. I would like that there are a lot of documents and new files there. They might already know everything, of course, or they're investigating it now. All this Burisma stuff, including Biden's son, means Biden and Obama definitely have immunity. I don't believe any of that, but there are definitely strings attached to them. Yes. Trump has only been president for 6 months, but people, especially ours, often forget that in that time he ended 6 wars. In America, everything is happening, and it's a very complicated war. Now it's already on the home stretch here, God willing. At least everything has become more active. This week really got to me very hard when I saw things like someone applauding Putin, or he did something wrong, such a scoundrel, and so on. What didn't you do? You had 3 years to get it right and prevent another Istanbul. Then 3 more years, just do it. You had everything. Biden, influence, you're tough. So where are these Europeans? Macron, why didn't you impose sanctions sooner? Don't you see how America does it? But we won't. Ukraine, go fight. We won't. Putin is so terrible. You handle it while we just live, rearm, and make money. Why can't people see what's obvious? I'm amazed.
They're just using Ukrainians like pieces on a chessboard, and that's it. I mean, geopolitically, it's clear. Well, today, Bessin said that the United States Reconstruction Investment Fund for Ukraine provides benefits to American taxpayers, as well as the reconstruction of Ukraine, and that this is also beneficial for Ukraine. And President Trump is turning the conflict into an economic partnership, making sure that future investments pay off. That is, after stopping the war, he's practically turning Ukraine into an ally. If you understand these words, do you know what my question is? What other sources of income could there be after the war ends? This Ukrainian fund.
Besides minerals, you mean?
Yes, well.
Trade turnover is low, but we need 0 tariffs. I think, let's say, if I were, so to speak, in Zelensky's place, we need to work on visa-free travel between America and Ukraine. Definitely, as practice has shown, all these illegal immigrants, it's just unrealistic here. It won't happen on a large scale. So this absolutely needs to be done. We need to work in this direction, You mentioned visa-free travel. So the best option, if Ukraine, as Mem suggested, becomes the United States of America, meaning one of the states. By the way, I even created a movement called the American Party of Ukraine. For what purpose? In order to emphasize where Ukraine should move, towards the conservative libertarian wing. And only with America will Ukraine be able to become an ally. And accordingly, I believe that this American Party of Ukraine is more like a movement even, so that people can join. By the way, a lot of people have already joined and are writing. I invite everyone. It's not an actual party at the moment in Ukraine because it's impossible to register anything. But to unite people in order to emphasize that Ukraine is an ally of America, I think that's the right direction. So, well, I have a question. How much time will it take? Well, I already asked you about the informational aspect, about breaking the informational picture in Ukraine during this time. With freedom of speech, it's 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6, you think?
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I think then we'll have to include Trump's underwear in the Dia-X platform.
For now, do you see where they're heading? They want their own social network and AI, following the Russian model to spread state propaganda. Soon they'll restrict messengers and calls too. We want America at Europe's center while they want China there and aim to build a new, better version. And pay attention. Oleg, I checked the chat. One person wrote real dreamers, then another message. Dobry, at least you're not Zelensky. People are fine with everything. We're just dreamers. Every business or artwork begins with imagination and becomes action. But they're satisfied with the swamp. Here's the issue. This GELOP, I'm sure these are objective numbers. Sadly, I have to admit it.
Rubio also spoke today and said that the only leader in the world who can talk to both Putin and Zelensky and bring them both to a meeting is Donald Trump. And we should be proud that we have a president who will make peace a priority. Do you agree with that statement?
I've promoted this for years. To me, there was no other option, and it was obvious. You sit here for years being called a Kremlin agent and insulted, only for everyone to eventually agree with what you've said all along. Trump is doing everything, but remains the only hope. That's how it is. But NATO won't change as they claim, and Zelensky is still stirring things up. But you see, we had to hold out for 3 years, during which hundreds of thousands of people died. No, it's fine. It suits me.
Well, that's always the case. Socialists in power deliberately find the wrong enemy, meaning they immediately turn people's thoughts in another direction, of course, an absolutely secondary one, while the real enemy is right here, the one we need to deal with. So 70,000 Cambodian Buddhist monarchs with portraits of Trump nominated Trump for the Nobel Prize for stopping the war. So do you see what kind of movements are happening in the world in support of Trump? And it's really surprising that Ukraine is opposing the fact that someone wants to bring real peace to Ukraine. And all this propaganda, the Democratic Party, the socialists, and also the globalists, they've been tearing Ukraine apart for 30 years, and they keep on doing it. And that includes in the media space. Why am I saying that we need to unite and spread information? Subscribe to Denis Yelisevich, so that there are more of us, as Javier Milei said. The more of us there are, the fewer of them there are. That's a fact. It's a simple principle.
But I'll add to that, Oleg. Gallup did a study on Ukrainians' attitudes toward the American government, UGU. So right now, 82% of Ukrainians can't stand the American government and America. And they recorded that 5 years ago, the approval rating was much higher. So they hate Trump. You see, it's a paradox on top of a paradox. I still don't understand these people. I'm trying, but I don't understand them yet.
Since Democrats in America have nothing left to oppose, there are no leaders, and the ideology has fully shifted left. Islamic ideology, and they have nothing left to oppose it with. The only thing they can do is shout loudly, wave their arms, and blame Trump for all the sins. But the fact that they brought America to the brink, no one, not even they themselves, talks about that. Let in 20 million immigrants. These are outright saboteurs, and I believe it's just a gang, a mafia that wanted to destroy America and the entire Western world. That's why, yes, would you agree that in reality, America will need Ukraine in the future? Because from a geopolitical point of view, if both Europe and Russia collapse there, you could say it becomes an island of freedom in the Eurasian space.
Right? Geopolitically, it's right next to Russia, between Russia, China, and Europe. It's still a big country. Thank you.
With a high intelligence quotient, I always say yes, yes, yes.
Oh, compared to the savages let in everywhere, it's night and day, like a Zaporozhets versus a Tesla. What's the issue? This is necessary, and we can interest them with many other things. But you see, if there were a proper president, everything would already be moving forward. But what if he supported the globalists? What if he supported Kamala Harris? So now, as a result, we supported Trump, you and I was still in Kyiv supporting Trump while they supported Harris. Who would have won? Who would have lost? If you had truly supported and understood Trump's ideology, the war would have ended long ago. And everything else. No, we understand everything perfectly well, why this is happening and the reasons behind it.
How can I vote for the Democrats or the socialists? Is this person sick, or do they have no brains at all to sign something like that for themselves? There is a verdict. As Javier Milei says, if a socialist sits across from you, he's not just giving his opinion, he wants to kill you, actually.
Yeah.
And so everyone reproaches Trump for shaking hands with Putin and so on. And here I have a picture where all the presidents, including Clinton and Bush and Obama, yeah, you saw it, they're all shaking hands. They're all shaking hands. So they always, emphasize and distract attention.
Trump said it well. He said that even if I got Russia to give up Moscow in negotiations, I'd still be seen as the bad guy. Yes.
Yes, it's an illness. I call it Trumpophobia. There's no other way to put it.
Yes.
Here's an interesting question for you. Will Elon Musk take part in the elections in 2028?
Well, yesterday the Wall Street Journal wrote that he's currently on very good terms with James David Vance. And it's not that he's given up on the idea of a third force, but he's thinking about it a lot and for now is focusing on business, on his companies. I think he understands the complexity of the task, plus he has faced some challenges. In short, I still hope for a thaw. After all, everyone should unite. And isn't it time to act against impurity?
At least at this stage. Because here we also have Vivek Ramaswamy, so he could lead the opposition force, because I think the Democrats might not make it to 2028. What do you think?
I can't imagine what they need to do. I see only one way out. They need to go back to who they were 20 years ago. At least follow those policies to have any chance. But as it is, the ratings are dropping every month. Basically, everyone understands that. And by the way, the situation with Ukraine, with this war, has opened many people's eyes and also showed who is who. And we already discussed today what will happen if these documents are published. All this compromising material and scams will eventually destroy their party. They need a total overhaul.
Yeah, I see on the feed that they're accusing us of just sitting there while they're all so smart here just because we're not there.
Uh-huh.
Well, basically, I don't see any more questions like that. Okay, Dennis, thank you very much for the broadcast. I think our meetings will be regular because we're working towards a common goal, bringing together people with common sense. Once again, I invite everyone to the X platform to join Dennis, to join me, and also on YouTube, both to Dennis and to me. And as I announced about the American Party of Ukraine, join us. This will be another direction, and I don't rule out that there will be many right and good directions that can only support and strengthen each other, because people relate to different things in different ways. Well, I believe that participating in conversations and discussions will still increase the amount of information space and thus drive the leftists out of this space. Thank you very much, Dennis.
Thank you, Oleg.
See you.
See you.